Hey guys, this is like part 2 of the editing for the space research paper, and Josh L. Lasagna has gone through and revised his paper with the editing suggestions from those videos. I think they're titled "Editing Your Space Paper," but he added his revisions in red there, and I'd mentioned how he needs to kind of expand on the space race and why there was a certain amount of emotion involved. And so he adds the U.S. was anxious at this time because the Soviet Union was a mile ahead, the U.S. at this time, and the U.S. was scared of losing to the Soviet Union. All this anxiety and pressure on President Eisenhower and NASA, they had to do something to take away the anxiety from the people, and to do that, they had to make a perfect rocket that was would for sure beat the Soviet Union, which still was very, very hard to do. Josh really hit upon that. A lot of it, when you answer these questions, there is the I answered the question, but you try to link them together. And he does that with this, okay? And let's go down. Trying to scroll down and it won't let me. Okay, here we go. There we go. Okay, like the National Defense Education Act. Now, in the speech here, and I gave you a link to it, President Eisenhower explains how many more engineers Russia had. And Russia had said 10 times as many engineers or something. Yeah, there it is. And so when President Eisenhower went on TV, he could tell that we were falling behind based on that. You know, more engineers and more scientists would lead to better advancement in space exploration. And that's what the speech was about. And if people, look, he mentions having an army of intelligent people that could help defend the country. So an army of scientists. So that really helped kind of explain how the National Defense Act, and you think that defense probably means, you know, the military, but I really like how Josh puts it together. They have an army, and I would have said engineers and scientists. Okay, now this was an important thing here, right there. Russia got ahead of the space race even further when they put the first person in space. So that was important. Okay. Okay, now the scrolling is working. Okay, here's some stuff Josh added here. Like the speech I put here, all right? We'll get to this right here. This was important. Doubling how many engineers and sites it would take. He explained in the speech, if you read the speech, and I put a link on, he explains how much it would cost. He just didn't make a promise that would say, we're going to win because we're better. He explained that it was going to cost money and it was going to take time. Now, this question here, I wish I would have worded it better, but there were missions for something called Project Mercury, was the first phase where they made rockets to go into space, and they put someone, you know, a man in space. But then there was Project Gemini. So in one of the videos I posted, they explained the many missions that Project Gemini had. So there's Project Mercury, Project Gemini, that's 2, and they lasted from till 58 to 62, like 62 to 66, and then Apollo, I think 66 through, I don't know, 75. So it's important to do that. And then Josh follows that up right here with, I asked that question, how many people were involved? And he really went into it. So 21 people were involved in Project 11, Apollo 11, about all the astronauts. Like here, this is important. Everyone thinks, I think you guys read that since Apollo 11 was first, that we failed 10 times. That wasn't true. We weren't trying to put someone on the moon the first 10 times. You had to do, you know, tests before that happened. So Josh goes on to explain all of that. Now, the other part of this paper Oh, look at all that. And he explains the Gemini missions. And if you look at Vintage Space on, it's a YouTube channel, it is really, really helpful. There's just this really exciting space nerd, and she just knows everything about space, and she's not an engineer, so she explains things super well. Okay, so and it sounds like Josh kind of geeked out here too, which is awesome. Okay, oh, look at all that. Nice. See how it has all those details? I don't think you had to do that many, have to do that many details, but if you could just kind of explain how important how long it took to get to the moon and what it really meant. And something I point out to people, and I've heard a million times, is that the technology that's in front of us right now, the phone in my hand and this computer, is at least 20 times more computing power that we used during the entire Apollo program. So with the technology in this phone, it would help do more launch computations and controls than they had at that time. So putting people in space with radios as your technology is just amazing. Okay, so here I think this is where I to get you to talk about how it affected America's pride. And that's kind of an easy question because, it improved it. Now here's something. At the tail end of the little TED Talk video, it explains that the space race ended differently than it began because the president at that time said that they didn't really think of it as a national achievement. They thought of it as an achievement for all of the people of Earth. I kind of think that's important to point out. And then at the end of the TED Talk, it explains how the Russians and the Americans had a mission that went together. And then since then, we've had, if you add some information from some of our space books, it mentions that the International Space Station was super important. 15 countries have worked on it. 200 people from all over the world have been up in space working cooperatively. So maybe the victory of space was that the space race was that people started working together internationally.